Hi guys, hey, good day to you. Sam here on, what are we, Thursday, January 18th. We're mid-morning. Some members interested in a look at Litecoin over on GDAX. So I've got it up here. Now I've got this, this is the 8 hour, so we can get some perspective on where we are. Now, this is the primary count that I have on this. And take note here, I do have it in log scale. So you see if I take it out of log scale, it's hard to get any perspective on it. So this just helps us get the separation so we can see the wave count a bit better. So all I've done here is just wicked off the lowest low that I could get on GDAX here, which is about $3.25. So if we look, so it's reasonable to assume that we put in a 1-2. So now the question becomes, where are we now? So fairly well established trend line here, so it would appear, it looks like you're putting in, a 5-wave sequence here, but we have some statistical abnormality here, if you will. All right, so if we make the assumption that we've gone 1-2 and then 1-2 and we put in a big 3, and we can use the oscillator here. So here's the L8 oscillator. We can see that clearly that would imply that that was a third wave, right? So, and I know the log scale distorts it a little bit because we compress. We compress up here, but you can see the implication would be that's a 3, and we do have nice subdivision here to get us into a 1-2, 3. So, if we're going to allow for that, what we're trying to do is get into either this will be the 5th of the third. That would give, we got a long way to go to get there. That's up at 1,000, over 1,000, or we're trying to put in potentially, the 1 of the third. That would imply much higher prices. If we just do some projecting and we think about potential, let me pull this off so we can give it some context. If we think about statistical probabilities and zones where we might expect to look for a third of the largest degree, if I just take my absolute low here and I go up to my 1 and I project from my 2, you can see, well, we went, here for this pivot here, we went almost to the 4,272. So we're awfully high. So you're out of a range here now that would make sense relative to pulling from that 1, projecting from the 2. So we would go to the next degree to try and get a handle on that. So we'd pull from this 1 here and then work from that 2, and you can see same problem. We're already past it. So, is this a problem that's relative to crypto because the ranges are so dramatic? Could this be a 3, 4, and we put in the 5? I mean, it's not out of the question, but as I look at this, I still see much higher prices here. I still see this as a 1-2, and it's hard to argue against that until we start breaking some of these essential pivots here. So this is the abnormality here. So again, I'm on an 8-hour chart here. So if I pull from, as I would in any Elliott count, and I'm trying to get a handle on my 4th, if I pull from the 2 to the 3rd and say, well, where are we relative to what we're correcting in the 3rd? We're almost to the 786. It's not that doesn't happen. It's just it's statistically rare. So if we go over to our, this is what I use for members here, and as we look and say, okay, well, it happens, right? I mean, we can see that it's only 10% of the time, though. 10% retrace more than 62% of the wave 3. So, we're definitely on the outside edge. Now, doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right? 10% of the time it does. So we've had this very steep retracement here, and we've held the 786. It's still valid, right? So we still have a valid impulsive wave count until that wave 1 is violated, right? We're in the 3rd. The assumption is we're still in the 3rd, so we can stay in it with an impulse wave here. We don't violate any Elliott rule set here until we take out this wave 1. So that's a long way down. That's, what is that, $69? So it's still it's hard to argue with this count, right? If you're an Elliottician and you're looking at that count, even if you check back to the 2, it doesn't help you that much more. I mean, there's this is the critical pivot that we're working from. Our assumption is that this is the 2 that gave us the 3, and now we've gone into a retracement that happens 10% of the time, and we actually it's almost a double bottom here. We got a little bit lower here. This was these are fear based, right? So these are just freak out, sell everything, right? So we've tapped twice. So you could make the case that what we've done here now is tested this low. We've tested, and we're getting a reaction. So if we're going to get up and get towards this 5th to complete a 3rd, potentially, what would be our 3rd here, and then start the 4th and the 5th, well, we've got some good ground to travel there. So let's go down to a lower time frame, see if we can make some sense of this. So I'm going all the way down to the hourly here. So now I've got to zoom back. I've got to scrunch a little bit here so we can get a handle on it. So now you start to look at it in this context. Maybe I need to go to a 2-hour so we can get a little better handle on it. Okay, so there we look at it. We see, okay, well it's still potentially placed. So if we're operating on the assumption that we've got a 4 here, granted a very deep 4, well, there's a few things that I see right off the bat. So potentially, it would appear that this was pretty good trend line support here. So if we look down here, that's if I tighten that up here and we get right on those swing highs, let's get it right there. It offers the possibility that we could be heading down lower here to where we've got this trend line support. That's not unreasonable. Now look, we'd be well beyond the 786. We'd still be holding the wave 1 high. Point of concern. If indeed we've put in the 4, which I think is a reasonable scenario here. Well, then what are we doing here? Well, now we're just trying to put in the 1, 2. So if this count is going to hold, the expectation is now that we're going to do a 1, 2. So we're going to do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to get up, and again, either we're going to put in a 1 wave relative to this 5th, or maybe we do it all at once. My guess would be that we'd subdivide. So let's put that in a different color and a lower degree, so it kind of makes sense. So if this is not unreasonable here, that we would be running into some resistance up here. You can see all of this congestion. So if we're going to come right, here's our Vegas wave right here, and then the same thing, we would, just as we would for any pivot swings, we'd be pulling, we'd be looking for algo activity here. We come up, we get a little shy of the 618 down. Here's their target down here. That's a little troubling, right? So I mean, so I promise you, there are algos that have sold this 50 that have targets down here. But remember, algos they don't always get their target, and they're gonna move based on what the market's giving them. Where are the dominant pivots? So now if we pull to this from our swing high to our swing low, well, we've got some resistance to get through right here, right? So that you can almost see how that could play as a potential 1 wave, with our 5th much higher. So possibly we're putting in a 1 wave here. We'd want to go down to smaller degree and see if we can get a clean 5 wave. So it's not unlike what we're seeing in Bitcoin, right? So we've had potentially a significant low here. Can we get 5 waves? And so it's hard to tell. So until you see, you really need more evidence. So let's go to the hourly, and then let me zoom in on this. Do we have 5 waves? Yeah, I mean, you could make that case. So here, let me open this up. Let me take this off. Maybe you can see it better. Okay, so if I were to look for 5 waves here, I can make the case, come here, that I've got a start on it. So I get a 1, 2. There's a 3, 4, 5 right into the Vegas wave. Okay, so we overlap. Do we? No, we don't actually overlap. So we've got an impulsive structure here. Here's our 4. Let's check our 3rd, make sure we're not shorter than the 1st. So if that's my 2, yeah. So 3rd goes exactly to the 1272, right? Square root of 1618. So here's potentially putting in our 5th right as we come up and we start to touch the bottom of the Vegas wave. So potentially what we have here, now let me get this. Let me change that color again. We'll get and go up a degree so it makes sense. So we'll go to minuet. Okay, so there we go. So how are we going to know? Well, You don't know. This is a good sign here that we've got 5 waves, but keep in mind that that could be an A wave, right? We have to, you have to allow for all the scenarios. But if you're trading it now, you got to pick one. So if you're trading off of the fact that we have a 4 here, despite that it was a deep retracement, the impulsive move here would imply it creates an opportunity. Whether or not it's a winning trade or not, remains to be seen. But it creates the opportunity for us to go into a trade looking for a second. So that's what we're going to look for. So let me pull this off. We don't know necessarily that that's our high, but that kind of makes sense. Wouldn't surprise me if that was it. So all we're going to do is just look for the retracement of the first of that 5-wave sequence. So again, it's the same thing every time. So, we would want to see, now I'm on an hourly, I'd want to see some subdivision here. I don't know where, we need to get an A wave in, look for that push in a B to see if we can get to highs. If it rolls over, then we're coming down into that high probability zone for our second. Right? It's just about playing the odds. That's all we can do. Right? We don't know what's going to happen. You can't be absolute about what's going to happen. You just can't trade that way, right? So that gets you in trouble. You're going to miss opportunities. You're going to force trades because you're trying to make what you think is happening fit what's actually there. So you trade what you see, not what you think, and that's an important thing to keep in your mind. What do you see? What are the tells? What are the odds? What are the odds? Odds are, if I've got a 5 wave and I've got a reasonably valid pivot down here that would support my larger degree, my larger structure, which would be that we're still in a larger 5-wave structure, then I'm just going to wait for this second down here. So not a trade there yet, but certainly one I want to pay attention to. If I can get 3 waves subdivided coming down into it, I'm definitely going to take the trade. I don't know that I'm saying, oh, I'm going to, that's my new Lambo payment. I'm taking the trade, right? That's all you can do. I'm taking the trade. I'm going to take it. I'm going to be conscious of what my risk reward looks like. Do I want to give it down to the 786? I might in Litecoin. I've got reasonable upside here. If this is going to be a 1-2, well, I've got some nice targets up here. I know I'm going to hit some resistance up here at the 618. So if I put my third up there, does that make sense? What kind of risk reward have I got there? That's 6.3 to 1. And if I want to be more conservative with it and get on the other side of the 65, assuming that I'm going to hold in my statistically my high probability zone, well, now I've got 10.7 to 1. Right, there you go. There's trading right there. You try and get a handle on where you are in the larger degree. You defer to what's happening at the largest degree. If I take you all the way back out, right? So let's go back here. If I take you all the way back out, the larger degree implies that we still have a 4th and we're looking to put in a 5th. So, even though this is unusually deep, the longer term trend it dominates. Let me rephrase. It dominates my thinking. So I'm going to defer to the longer term trend until I see evidence to support something contrary to that. Until that trend fails, that's where the probabilities lie. So, and this, if I'm taking that, now I'm trying to get back to the 618. 10 to 1, yeah, I take that trade. All right, guys, that's kind of my thinking on that and how to approach it. Odds, that's all you get. Play the odds and do the same thing every time. That way you're not jumping from one idea to the next. Commit to it, take the trade, get a stop on it. You don't need to be right that many times to be well paid for that. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there.